Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And you know Teddy. He might not stay with us for long because it's a hot day, so he probably won't want to be hanging out in the lap for long, but we do have him here for now. And what are we here to do?
We're here to do our July wrap-up.
Yes. And we actually didn't even talk about whether or not we have August plans. I think we're both going to kind of freewheel it in August anyway. But July was a good reading month for me. How was it for you?
It's just okay.
Yeah, I read 10 books, and I did that. That was a little silly on my part because I sort of crammed one book in just to be able to say that I did 10, but I did 10. How did you do?
I did 6, and they were short. Most of them are my male romance. But I've been working a lot this month, so I was like 2 weeks in a store.
Yeah, working pretty nonstop. Even
12-hour days.
Even through the weekend.
Yeah.
So
didn't get a lot of reading done, but I had a very long road trip and got a really good book in.
Yeah.
So.
And you started off the month with one of your favorite books of the year so far. It made it onto that list, which will be linked down below.
So my first book was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez.
We do have a copy of that somewhere. Oh, there. Sorry.
It's on my pile.
Yeah. There it is.
We both read this.
We both read this. So this will be, I read this later in the month. Yeah. So.
Fantastic book.
It cracked into my top 10, but I hadn't read it by the time we did our best books of 2024.
Yeah. It kind of reads as that it's going to be a little rom-com, but it's very serious.
Yeah.
There's some real serious issues going on here, and I thought she handled them really well.
Yeah.
To talk about dynamics in families, some mommy issues, trust issues, everything. And it was pretty heavy.
Yeah. But in a good way. It's still, I'd say, fluffy enough that you could take it on like a summer vacation if summer's ending. Yeah. But if you wanted something kind of fun and easy to read for summer or fall, it still fits that, but it definitely has a serious side.
Fall with a hot chocolate and this book would be amazing.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Ignore the leaves. You don't need to rake them yet.
So really amazing book. I'm looking forward to read some more of Abby Jimenez.
Yeah. So the premise of it is you have Emma and Justin, and Justin has a post that went viral online about how his friends call him the good luck charm because when he dates a woman, as soon as they break up, she meets the man that she ends up marrying. Like she really quickly ends up getting married. And Emma has had the same thing happening to her. So she sends him a message online. They start messaging back and forth, and there's immediate chemistry. And then one of them kind of floats the idea, like, if we dated just for the summer, hence the title, theoretically, once we broke up, we would both meet our soulmate. So that's what they do. And of course, complications ensue. I will say, it seems like a long book, but it really justifies the page count, and it's sort of compulsively readable.
Yeah. It's a big book, but it's very easy. It's a real quick read.
Yeah.
There is a puppy in the book. He does not get hurt, but he's a fun part of the book.
He is a fun part of the book. It is also part of a series. I think it's the third part in the Part of Your World series. I will say, I didn't even know that it was part of a series until I had finished Just for the Summer. So I don't think you need to have read the other two, but as a bonus for, I think, both of us, now we get to go back. And some of the characters that pop up on the side have been in the previous books. So it'll be fun for us to discover where those characters came from. I think Teddy's getting a little overheated.
Yeah, that's really warm.
It's really hot. So I'm going to put Teddy down and we'll go to the next book.
Yep.
So my first book of the month was actually A Dash of Salt and Pepper by Kosoko Jackson, which I listened to on audio. That was a fun book. And you actually read that in July as well.
I did too, yeah.
So it's a fun book. I would say if you are looking for a single cinnamon bun recommendation this month, Just for the Summer is it. But A Dash of Salt and Pepper was a cute book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read Salt and Pepper as well, and I thought it was a lot of fun. I wish it would have... It takes place in a kitchen, so you have a chef and his sous chef. But there's not a lot of cooking happening.
No.
And me, I want more cooking. So.
And I will say, when I was talking to you about the book, I got so excited because there was a part where, so the protagonists are Xavier and Logan, right?
Yeah.
And Xavier goes to work in Logan's kitchen, and I was so excited that it spent time in the restaurant, and then it's not until like almost the end of the book that you get into the restaurant again. But it was cute. So Xavier has been working, he's like business school and is really trying to set him up on a business track for success and be entrepreneurial, but he has a couple of setbacks. He doesn't get into this big entrepreneurial program in Munich that he wanted to get into. His boyfriend dumps him. The startup he was working for closes. So he ends up living back with his parents, and he feels like a failure because he's ended up back in the place he was trying to get out of all these years. And Logan is a man who is a single father. He owns a restaurant, and Xavier ends up sort of working for him while he tries to get back on his feet. And of course, sparks fly. And it's a cute book. It's about little trust issues. Xavier can be a little much.
Yeah,
I think you found him to be a little more than I did.
I did not like him at all.
I thought he's a lot in the beginning, but I feel like it mellowed out over time. I don't think you had exactly that. So, yeah. Oh, well. That's what
grudges.
it is. That's fair. So that was my first book of the month. What do you want? What do you have next?
My second one is The 4,000 Paws by Lee Morgan. It's a nonfiction about the Iditarod dog sled racing competition. But the vet, who is one of the vets on with the dogs, it's kind of his story of all the years he did this. I find it very fascinating, so I really wanted to read it. I was so excited when I saw the book and really wanted to dive into it. It was okay. There was a lot of information in there about the dog sled races and how well the dogs are taken care of. And that's what made me feel good about the book, is they really put a lot of effort making sure the dogs are taken care of. If they're on a dog sled crew and they have anything that the vet says, pull them, the vet has last word. The musher cannot argue. It's like if the vet says, no, we're taking it back to Anchorage, you pick them up after the race. They have to go with it. Yeah. So I thought it was really good on that part, that the dogs were taken care of.
Yeah, I've listened to, You're Wrong About did an episode about dogs, and it was the same thing. The person was talking about how anyone who has sled dogs really obsessively takes care of them, and they have like a bonded unit, and that seems lovely.
And how they feed them, they have to ship. It takes a lot to get into a dog sled race. I think a minimum of $10,000, because there's an entry fee, which is $500, I think. But you have to ship all the food to every checkpoint along the race. You have to have housing for them. They will bring straw and put straw down for the dogs. So it's really interesting. It's also what dog in what position of the bobsled. I found it really fascinating.
That is interesting.
You don't need your fastest dogs up front. You need your dogs who can see and make a judgment call. You put your faster ones in the middle, and on the back end, you want your dogs that can control the sled.
Yeah. You're Wrong About talked about that as well, because they said a lot of people will think that you want your alpha dog, and they took a little bit of a sideline to talk about how the whole alpha dog thing is another You're Wrong About. It's a myth.
Yeah.
And they said, but most people would think that you want like your strongest, toughest, most dominant dog, and that is actually not the case. The woman who was the expert even talked about how she's seen a lot of really shy, kind of introverted dogs who are excellent lead dogs because of all that. It's like they have good judgment about what's ahead of them. So
it's usually a husky, but usually a bigger dog. But there was one sled musher who had a team of standard poodles.
I would love to see that.
I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
Paint them all pink, make them fun. So it was a fun book. It was not as I had high standards for it, but it was just good.
Yeah. But you got a lot of information out of it.
Yeah,
at least. So
I
there's that. Yeah.
So that was that.
That was that. So my next book was not a fun book. Hombrecito by Santiago Jose Sanchez. However, I really liked this book a lot, and I do kind of wish that I had finished this one before we did our best books of 2024 so far, because this would have also cracked into the top 10. And it's just really good. And this is a debut author, and I cannot wait to see what they end up doing next. This is the story of, it feels very autobiographical in some ways. It's about an immigrant named Santiago who is taken from his home to Miami with his mother and his brother when he's very young. And of course, because he's younger, he sort of adapts to the U.S. a little better and faster. But it's about his life and how a lot of the lingering traumas of his childhood follow him, and he is gay, and it's a really interesting book. Not a happy book by any stretch. It reminded me a little bit of Shuggy Bain, I would say if you have liked Shuggy Bane, it's different enough that it won't feel like reading the same thing, but it reminded me of that. So if you're a fan of Shuggy Bane or have been curious about Shuggy Bane, this would be a really good book to read. And I hope that more people do discover this book because I thought it was just fantastic. And I was lucky enough to be sent a finished copy from Riverhead. So that was a nice little stroke of luck because I had been really looking forward to reading this anyway. So when they reached out asking if I wanted to copy it, I think I like screamed.
You did.
Yeah. So that was Hombrecito by Santiago Jose Sanchez. If you haven't read it, I'd really highly recommend it.
I haven't done Shuggy Bane yet, and I probably should.
Yeah, it's bleak.
Yeah,
you got to
I
be
know.
ready for it. But yeah,
I'm into happy stuff right
yeah,
now.
and maybe after the election.
Yeah.
Maybe. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, my next one was Salt and Pepper. Again,
Okay.
actually Salt and Pepper.
Yeah.
Fun book. So you have a whole lot more books than me, so I'll let you just jump next.
Well, my next one was a gay hockey graphic novel. Check Please, Volume 1, which is by Ngozi Ukazu. And I was really looking forward to it because it sounded adorable. It's a graphic novel. It's YA about a former junior figure skater who pivots to hockey because he just loves hockey. He also is an amateur patissier. He loves to make pies. And he gets to college, and he is sort of adjusting to life on the college hockey team, where he is a lot shorter than a lot of the other team members. They're very like butch and kind of broy. So he's sort of finding his place. Sounded adorable. It is adorable. I think somebody commented to point out that it had been a web comic first, and I do think you can really tell because it feels like a lot of really quick installments that overall tell a story. But it feels like it sort of glosses over a lot of the details. Like, the first book is 2 years of his college career, and I think the second book, it's a duology, is his last 2 years in college. And it just feels like it sort of skims the surface as it works through those first 2 years, and he gets situated on the team. I kind of would have liked more pages to allow his story to get fleshed out and get to know some of the people a little more, but it is adorable, and I love that it exists for young adult readers. I got it from the library, and it actually came from a high school in Montana when I got it, and I think it's wonderful that a high school in Montana has a gay hockey graphic novel. So I love that. Thought the book was just okay. So what do you have next?
What do I have next? My next one, again, thank you to Jackie McMenamin for this. I finally found the 6th and 7th book of my Dr. Thornton series.
You've been waiting for that one.
Waiting.
Yeah.
Kiss, Marry, Kill by S.E. Wynne. Just part of my Mellow romance. It was a series of 7 following Dr. Thornton and his boyfriend, sheriff of this small town in Texas. And they were really kind of good books. I mean, there's always a murder. And
Very Murder, She Wrote.
Very Murder, She Wrote. And I couldn't find the 6th and 7th book until just recently. I actually had to find them on Apple.
Yeah, you did. You can say that because we don't do Amazon for one thing. We don't at all. So you had to wait until it was available because even Barnes and Noble didn't have it, right?
No, nobody had it. And
So-
I finally found it on Apple Reads or Apple Books.
Yeah.
And so I did it, and I'm glad I did. I finished the series, and spoiler alert for my next book, and had a lot of fun with them. I just think they were really
I should try one at some point.
just a good, happy, healthy relationship among two men, one very shy and one outgoing, and it was just kind of fun.
Yeah.
So
at some point I'll have to try. So my next one was Sandwich by Catherine Newman, which I was really excited to look for when it came out because Ann Patchett talked about it on the Laydown Diaries and had glowing things to say about it. It's probably not a surprise. She has a blurb on the front jacket. And then I just started hearing about this book everywhere as soon as it came out. It's wild. It feels like there was no buildup to the release of this book from a marketing perspective. And then once it was out, everybody was talking about it. And I was really excited, managed to track down a copy. And it reads very quickly. First of all, it's like barely over 200 pages. But it just is compulsively readable. Like once you pick up, you can read like 50 pages in a blink of an eye and not really know it. And I think comments from some people who have read it is that the protagonist, Rocky, can be infuriating. So your mileage may vary about how you respond to this book based on that. She is infuriating and stubborn in a lot of ways, but I also think that's kind of the point. That's just who she is. Like, she is someone who can be very dramatic and a little bit self-centered and try to pull things back toward her. I think it's an interesting enough book that it doesn't really matter. And I think that the rest of the family balances her out enough that it doesn't really matter, especially her daughter Willa, who is just a really great foil, who's similar enough to her, but it's kind of like Frasier. I remember this apocryphal story. David Hyde Pierce said when he was reading the scripts for Frasier, he didn't really understand his character. And when they started actually rehearsing, the director kept telling him bigger, bigger. And he realized, oh, I'm the version of Frasier that is absolutely ridiculous and makes him look grounded. And Willa is the version of Rocky that keeps her grounded. And I thought it worked. It's also very funny. So this is about a family who has been vacationing in the same place for a week every summer. And they have gone back to it. When I did my Friday reads about this one, I did not know that there's a town in Cape Cod called Sandwich. I know that now. But Rocky is sort of sandwich. She's a sandwich generation. She's between her children, who are now adults in their 20s, and her parents, who always join for this trip, who are elderly, and she doesn't know how long they're going to be around anymore. And Rocky is going through a lot of changes in her life, and she's going through menopause, which takes up a lot of space in the book. I actually just heard an NPR interview with Catherine Newman, and she said her original elevator pitch for the book was that she wanted to write about reproductive mayhem. And you can see how that comes out in the final version of the book. She said it definitely changed as she went through drafts of it, but you can see how that comes out in different ways, because, you know, a woman's reproductive body and just body in general is very much on her mind as she's now going through menopause, and her kids are growing up, and she's really heavily feeling that sort of empty nester feeling. And I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It's a very good book, and it's been a fun book to talk to people about. So that was Sandwich by Catherine Newman. What do you have?
My next one was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It was recommended to me by Chelsea from Montana Book Company. Thank you, Chelsea. I started reading it, and I wasn't sure where I'm going, but it's about this woman who basically just didn't have the best life. Just dead-end job. She was fired from a job. Her cat died. It's all in the beginning, no spoiler. And so she attempts to take her life. But between life and death is the Midnight Library. And every book on the shelf is a bit of her life, or what her life would be like if she would have made a different choice. So she went through like several books. And it got me thinking, it's like, I'm happy where my life is. I hope so. Couldn't be happier. But I've made a lot of choices in my life. And I always thought about, well, what if I didn't do this? Or what if I did do this? Where would my life have gone?
Yeah.
And so it really makes you think a lot. And her life really could have gone in a really great direction, could have gone in a worse direction. And that's how you think about your life and where you want to go. And the ending was a total twist for me, because it's not what I expected. And I really enjoyed the book.
Okay.
So...
well, I should catch up to it, because it does sound interesting. Because I think everybody has moments in life where you... And my big example is, a lot of the time, I went to a college that now looking back, will say it like, I didn't need to go there. It was too expensive. And for what I wanted to do with my life, I didn't really need it. However, going to that college is what got me to New York, which is how I met you. So my life would be so different. I wouldn't know you if I hadn't gone to that college.
And one of my big turning points is I had a chef who was horrible to me. And I transitioned out of the kitchen into something else, which led to a lot of different things. But I ended up doing electronic medical records, which got me into a industry that took me to New York. And that's one reason. And I wanted to be a pastry chef in New York. So all this stuff worked for me in New York, but the electronic medical records is how I made my living. Yeah. And that's how I met him.
Yeah.
So
twists and turns in life. Yeah.
So I think, what if I would have had a great supportive chef? And I was told I was really good, but I was pushed down and made feel bad about myself by the chef.
That's very the bear.
Yeah, very. And then when I quit my job, all the other sous chefs in the department and my friends all there, it's like, I don't know why you didn't come talk to me. I would have helped you get through this because you were amazing. And it just shut me down.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But I'm happy where I ended up.
Yeah, and so the Midnight Library sounds interesting.
Yeah. So it's a great book to make you think if your life didn't go in a direction you wanted, but maybe it was meant to take you there.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, it's a very deep book. I liked it.
Yeah, you need some of those every once in a while. So. Well, my next one was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, but we already talked about that, so I'm going to jump one book over. By the way, again, delight. That book is a delight, just like this guy. Me. So the next book I finished after that was The Coast Road by Alan Murren, and I know I've talked about this story a fair amount. I'm going to do it one more time, so indulge me. I saw this book in like every bookstore we went to in Ireland and didn't get it. And I kept picking it stood out to me because of the cover.
The cover's gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's the same cover over in Ireland. It sounded interesting when I read the dust jacket, but I had never heard of Alan Murren. I didn't know anything about the book, so I kept thinking, well, I'm going to pick up some other things that I had been looking for, like Kate O'Brien, John McGahern, and I really wanted to focus on some other things, and like paperback specifically, that would be a little easier to carry around as we traveled. So I didn't get it. And as soon as we got home, it was published in the U.S., and MJ in Canada was the first person who said, I just read this book I think you would love. It's called The Coast Road. And I was like, you are kidding me. But it had just been released in the U.S., so I managed to get a copy at Montana Book Company, and I ended up listening to it on audio. But it was a very good book, and I did enjoy it. I do think it felt a little similar to Amongst Women, the book by John McGahern that I got when we were in Ireland and Scotland. Did we mention that?
We went to Ireland.
We went to Ireland and Scotland.
We ate a lot of fish and chips.
We did eat a lot of fish and chips and a lot of other delicious foods. I was going to start listing foods that we ate. Let's not do that. But I think I got similar enough vibes to Amongst Women, which I had loved, that I feel like I kept comparing it to that, which is unfair because this is a really good, interesting book on its own. It's set in 1993 or 1994. I think it's both, actually, leading up to a referendum on divorce, where people in Ireland were able to vote about whether or not people would be allowed to be divorced. And it passed. So divorce has been legal ever since in Ireland. And the book is set in the lead up to that referendum, and there are a bunch of characters in it, but there are sort of two central female figures that it follows, Colette and Izzy. Colette had run out on her husband and her sons to pursue another relationship with a different man in Dublin. That relationship has sort of fallen through. She's running out of money because now she's running into the limits of what a woman on her own who has left her family behind is able to do in Ireland at the time. So she ends up back in the town where she had lived, but her husband won't let her see her sons. And then you have Izzy, who's sort of unhappily married to a man with big political aspirations. And he has limited what she's able to do as a woman because, like, she had a successful shop. And as soon as they were married, he sold the shop without even telling her that he was going to do it. And she decides to help Colette out because her son has been friends with Colette's son. So she will do things like say, hey, I'm going to take the boys Christmas shopping. They'll go to another town, and then she'll tell Colette, this is where we're going to be, and they meet. And so that is sort of the inciting incident of the book, and drama happens after that, of course. And I thought it was really interesting and very good. So I'm glad that I did read it, and especially since you always regret the book that you don't buy. And this was the book that I regretted not buying when we were in Ireland. And it really came back to haunt me.
But we got some great books.
We sure did. We sure did.
Small
and I've read
Joys
a bunch of them.
Was so good.
Small Joys. Amongst Women was terrific. And I really liked Dancing in the Shallows.
Did we get Tin Man over there too?
No, we did not. We just happened to have read it around the same time. The Henna Wars was also a fun, interesting book. So yeah, we did get lots of interesting books. And I'm glad this one kind of found its way back to me over time. So what do you have next?
Well, go for your next one because...
Oh, okay. You're running out?
I'm running out, and I loved this book.
So the next one is something that Joel had told me to read. It's The Lights on Knockbridge Lane by Roan Parrish. It's actually the third in a series. Yeah. It's set in the town of Garnett, Wyoming. Yeah. I haven't read the first two.
I read the first one.
You read the first one, but you didn't read the second.
No.
So clearly you don't need to have read the others.
And it also deals with some mental health issues, too.
Yes.
Which I appreciate. I mean, a lot of my male for male have been mental health issues, but I think that does struggle a lot of gay men. I like how they deal with it in all the books that I've read. You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, was huge anxiety issue.
The charm offensive is my
The
ultimate.
charm
for that.
offensive is good. I like how the authors are dealing with these mental health issues and bringing them to light, that it is normal in a relationship.
Yeah.
And you can still have a good relationship.
Lord knows I brought a lot of emotional baggage to Joel.
I'm just baggage.
Oh,
and but Lights on Knockbridge Lane was super sweet.
It is. So the premise is you have a man whose name I have already forgotten, I'm sorry, who is a single father. Basically, it's one of those situations where if a gay man is a single father in a romance book, he either needs to have been married to a woman and then sort of come out of the closet as bisexual or gay, or he has a sister who really only exists to have had a baby and then given it to her brother and completely disappeared. And this is the latter. He has a sister who got pregnant and decided she wanted to have the baby but didn't want the baby. So he stepped in, took the baby, but his partner at the time didn't really want to have kids. So ended up, after a couple of years, he ended up splitting. And then this guy ended up back in his original hometown, which is Garnet, Wyoming. And it's their first Christmas on their own, and he wants it to be special for his daughter. And she comes up with this idea that she wants to have the house with the most Christmas lights ever. And even though they all know it's like not going to be possible, he tries to do that for her. And then meanwhile, there's a sort of Boo Radley type guy who lives across the street from them. The townspeople, because they don't see him out in the daylight, they have all these rumors that he's a vampire or a witch or a werewolf, all kinds of things like that. And you see like eerie glowing light come out from his basement lights, basement windows.
Green glowing lights.
Glowing lights. And he has reasons for remaining so isolated that come out over the course of the book. And of course, they end up getting to know each other through the daughter. She kind of breaks into the house to find out, because she sees that he has like a spider or something. He has a lot of creepy crawlies. Are there not spiders?
Tarantulas are spiders.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought you were correcting.
No, I'm specifying the
type. Yeah,
because people have them as pets.
He did. I would never. But anyway, so it is a cute book. I did think for the first half it felt like a kind of standard male for male romance. Yeah. It really does pick up toward the end. As you careen into the end of the book, it really has a lot of fun, cute moments. And so that's where I started to see, I see why Joel liked this so much. Yeah.
Without giving away too much, there's also a part. The father really can't afford a whole lot because he just left everything behind to move to another town, has a daughter, and can't really provide all the lights. And how he goes about getting more lights and how things happen to get more lights is really super sweet.
It's like community and togetherness.
Yeah.
And lots of fun, good Christmas stuff. But if you're opposed to Christmas stuff, I will say, despite the fact that the premise is about Christmas lights and it's all over the cover of the book, Christmas is actually not a huge deal in the book. It's just about the lights. And it's really only at the end when Christmas starts to actually happen that it really becomes like a beat you over the head Christmas book.
Yeah. Danny recommended this book.
Yes, he did.
That Bookish Bear. Thank you, Danny.
Yeah. Hi.
So I have found Danny and I have a lot of similarities in what we like in books. Yeah. So it's been super, super fun swapping some books with him.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Because he liked Dash of Salt and Pepper as well. And he loved Just for the Summer.
Just for the Summer.
So,
he got me to read Just for the Summer. So.
Yeah. So it works out.
Yeah. Awesome dude.
Yep. Do you want to do another one of yours, or do you want me to keep going?
Well, my last one is the last in the series of S.C. Wynne, Vote 1 for Murder.
Vote 1 for Murder?
Yeah.
Ooh, diabolical.
Sorry, 1 vote for murder.
Oh, it's still diabolical.
Very diabolical. Super sweet. It kind of wraps up the whole series. And
so it's definite there will be no more?
I don't think so. I mean, this has been a year since the last publication. And I just haven't seen any more.
That's a shame. Because you really enjoy those, especially as like something fun to read before bed.
Yeah.
Calm your mind down.
Calm my mind down, something happy.
With murder.
With murder. Oh, God. The 6 books end in a massive hangover.
Cliffhanger?
A massive cliffhanger. And it's like, but it was available.
I don't like that. I don't like when series books do that, but
fun series. Thank you, Jackie. I really enjoyed them. So it's wholesome.
Yeah. I should try one at some
good
point.
relationships, and not all relationships are perfect. Some are a little rocky, and how they managed to get through it. So loved it.
There you go.
So what do you got?
Well, I have a couple of things to power through.
No, we'll do take your time.
Next was We Burn Daylight by Brett Anthony Johnston, which actually has been published. When I started reading this, it hadn't been published yet. It is out now. I have an advanced reader's copy of the book. The sort of elevator pitch for this is that it's Romeo and Juliet in a doomsday cult. Which is, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
So the cult part is inspired by the Branch Davidians in Waco in the early 1990s. I don't remember what year. Basically, you have Roy, who's the Romeo stand-in. He is the son of the sheriff in Waco in the early 90s. And then you have Jay, the Juliet stand-in, who grew up in California, and her mother became infatuated with the Lamb. That's what the guy who leads the cult calls himself. And ended up splitting for Waco and taking Jay with her. So you have Roy, whose father is the sheriff, and you know the whole book, he kind of knows that the FBI is investigating this cult, and there's probably going to be some kind of a standoff. So it's Mercutius and Capulets. You know, he's the son of the sheriff. She's living on the compound where the cult is. And there are a lot of really clever nods to Romeo and Juliet in little details, like one of the sort of adult figures in Romeo and Juliet's life in the play is a nurse, and Roy's mother is a nurse. And there are all kinds of callbacks like that. I do think it lost steam a little bit as it went. The first 100 pages, I was really invested in the book. And then I think one of the problems is I don't really believe Roy and Jay as star-crossed lovers. And Jay in particular, like, she actually voluntarily goes with her mother to the compound, even though she does not like the Lamb at all. She goes because she thinks, well, this will be a fun thing to tell my friends when I get back to school. Like, oh, I spent my summer with the cult, and now I'm back. Because she thinks it'll kind of make her popular or more interesting to people. But then she gets there, and it doesn't really make sense, because she has to not be invested in the cult in order for her to have a relationship with Roy. So her place in the cult doesn't really make sense. And I do think it's trying to be a little morally gray with whether or not the FBI was right to have a standoff and to sort of storm the compound in the first place. And I don't think that part quite works out, especially since it feels like it kind of wants you to sympathize a little more with the cult and not with the FBI, when there was things like statutory rape going on, and you're like, I don't know if that should have been allowed to continue. But it is a really interesting book, and it is good, and it has all of those clever playoffs of Romeo and Juliet, so I liked it, didn't love it. But that's We Burn Daylight by Brett Anthony Johnston. And then you're done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a gay version of Romeo and Juliet?
I'm sure there probably is. I don't know
Anybody
off the top
have
of my
one
head.
for me?
If you know a gay Romeo and Juliet
Or lesbian?
or lesbian, oh yeah, that'd be. I don't know why that got me all excited. I'm like, oh yay!
I mean, same-sex Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
That would be fun.
Because obviously you have like West Side Story that's a
write
playoff. You should write one. See
I
if you don't
really
see it in the world, write
play
it.
with the idea of wanting to write just a short story, just a little something.
You should do it.
My little novella.
Yeah.
So, I
'Cause,
may.
yeah, I think you'd do a good one. Hi. Editing Greg is jumping in to say that after Joel and I started filming, I immediately thought of Brickmakers by Selva Almada, translated by Andy McDermott, which is a global gay spin on Romeo and Juliet. However, it is a very violent book, and bad things happen to dogs. So I am not about to do that to Joel. So I did think of this one, but if you have other recommendations, maybe that don't have bad things that happen to dogs, let us know in the comment section down below.
All right. Go for your next one.
right,
I know you're excited.
I had so much fun with this one. So Do Tell by Lindsay Lynch. I had been thinking about reading this for like a year because Lindsay Lynch works at Parnassus and Patchett's bookstore in Nashville. She's one of the book buyers there. And Do Tell was released around the same time as Ann Patchett's book, Tom Lake. So she went on book tour with Ann Patchett. And for me, Tom Lake clearly stole a lot of the thunder. That's the book that I read last year and loved. You read it and loved it. But I always kind of had it in my mind like, that actually sounds like a really interesting book. Well, it recently came out in paperback, and I decided I was going to do a bit of a test. I got Do Tell from the library, and I thought, I'm going to try the first chapter or two, and if I find them interesting, I will order a copy from Parnassus, because that's the store she works at, and, you know, support someone whose content, bookish content, I really enjoy. out in the world, because she's always part of the Lay Down Diaries, and she loves dogs.
She does.
Yeah, her dog hangs out in the store with a lot of the other dogs that hang out there. So obviously, I really liked the first chapter because I ordered a copy from Parnassus, and it came, and they personalized it to Greg Let's Gossip Lindsay Lynch. So it's set in old Hollywood, which is a niche interest of mine. So I was probably destined to really like this book. And I love the jacket and the kind of old Hollywood vibes. You have a woman who grew up in poverty, like dirt poor, and not having much of anything. She had to leave school at one point to take care of all of her younger siblings. And she won a contest to be treated like a princess in Hollywood for a week. So she goes and then never leaves. She sort of plans to stay in Hollywood, and she works to get a contract with one of the studios, and she does. But she's only a moderately successful actress. So as the book begins, her 7-year contract is coming to an end, and she knows that it is not going to be renewed, and she needs to figure out what she's going to do. And because she grew up in poverty, she does sort of have that scarcity mindset, like not having anything and going back to living like that sort of scares her. So she reinvents herself, and the back of the book will even tell you she pivots to a gossip column. It does almost feel like that's something that she works through over the first half of the book. So it's not a spoiler, but it is fun seeing her reinvent herself in the book. And because she works in gossip now, it plays with a lot of moral problems. And actually, I said to you, I forgot to mention this in my Friday Reads, but I said, I feel like a good screenwriter and director with a really good cast could make a film version of this that feels like The Devil Wears Prada. It would be a bit of a hard turn in terms of tone and content, because Devil Wears Prada implies a sort of like fluffy concept and tone of the book, and this is a little more serious than that. But I think you could have that same thing, because the thing about Andy in The Devil Wears Prada is everybody is constantly questioning whether or not she's selling out, and that is kind of do tell as well, because gossip can ruin lives, which you also saw in The Coast Road by Alan Murren. And it sort of plays with that idea in some really interesting ways. And I really thought this was a fun book and an interesting book. And another thing I was mentioned to someone in the comments, but I didn't mention in my Friday Reads, is that one thing I hate about historical fiction is when it applies modern sensibilities to its characters. This book has some modern sensibilities, but it allows the characters to live in the complex world in which they would have actually inhabited. Like, nobody's using the phrase "Me Too" or anything like that. And there isn't like a big moment where a gotcha moment where they kind of fix sexism or anything like that. The characters are living within the constraints of the world they exist in the 1930s and 1940s. And that is kind of refreshing and clever on Lindsay Lynch's part. So I had a lot of fun with this book, and I look forward to what she comes up with next. And I would really highly recommend this book to you, especially if you have an interest in old Hollywood, because it does fit that niche interest of mine. I love that. So
I forgot one.
You forgot one.
Yeah.
What do you have?
My July chapter of Inland Island by Josephine Johnson.
Yes.
So I'm reading a chapter a month, because the book is set a chapter or a month per chapter. So every July I read July, August I'll read August.
Yeah.
And just really enjoying it, because the book gives you the feel of what season I'm in now.
Yeah.
And she writes so beautifully.
She really does. That is such a beautiful... I think what I said when I read that book is I had never read a book that talks about nature that made me want to go out and experience nature in the way that book does. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's so
really good book. It's a little poetic. It's just basically her just seeing what's outside her window.
Yeah, because... I'll link my video about Josephine Johnson and her Pulitzer Prize down below. She wrote a Pulitzer for Now in November. Yeah, down below. Yeah. She had a really interesting career. She won a Pulitzer for her debut novel, and then her career just abruptly stopped. And the rumor is that she wrote a book that her publisher was concerned could have been seen to be communist, which was a big buzz fear at the time. And then she ended up getting married, moving to another state, and raising kids on an old farm. And they let the property go wild a little bit to see what happens. So the Inland Island is her having sort of left her writing career behind, observing everything that is going on this property that they've allowed to go wild. And it's just fascinating. Yeah.
Really like
so
it.
it's very good. So once I finished Do Tell, it was July 30th. And for some reason, I realized that for 2 months in a row, I had read 9 books. I read 9 books in May, I read 9 books in June, and now I had hit 9 books for July. And instead of just feeling content with having hit 9 books 3 months in a row, I got the spirit of the ruckus and said, what can I do to hit 10 books for the month? I should find a short audio that will allow me to hit 10 books. So I crammed in Eastbound by Mila Stickerangle, translated by Jessica Moore. And I liked it, but because I worked so hard to cram it in and listen to it in one day, it's a 2-hour audio, but I crammed it into one day just to get it done. And I don't feel like I did the book justice by doing that. So part of me now feels like this could be a book on the level of like Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson or Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which are my favorite novellas. But because I rushed through it, I don't feel like I allowed myself to really process it. So now I feel like I need to go back and reread it at some point because I did this silly thing where I wanted to get 10 books in a month. Silly. So the premise, it is. The premise is you have Alyosha, who, this book was originally published in French in 2012 and was published in English last year. And it was one of the New York Times Book Review's 10 best books of 2023. Alyosha has been conscripted into the Russian army, and he is on a train eastbound into Siberia, but he does not want to be in the Russian army. So quickly he gets beaten up by another soldier on the train, and he decides, he's like, I already don't want to be here. So he starts trying to figure out how he can sneak his way off of the train. He runs into Helene, who's a French woman who's also kind of running away from something on the train. And there's a language barrier between them. They really struggle to communicate through the whole book, but he manages to convey that he's trying to desert the army and needs to get off the train. So she hides him in her compartment, and it actually really does build a sense of suspense as it goes, because you want to get to the end and find out if he gets away or if they get caught, because getting caught obviously would have terrible consequences for both of them. And I need to go back and reread it to see where it sits. But I know it is a very good novella. I just wish I had given it its due, if that makes sense. So that was my last book. I know we've already said we don't really have plans for August, neither one of us, but I know we both have our books lined up. So I'm actually already reading The Country Girls by Edna O'Brien. This is something I've started, and I'm almost done with the second installment of the trilogy, which is called The Lonely Girls, and I love it. I'll link my last Friday reads down below where I talk about Edna O'Brien and why this is a significant work, because Edna O'Brien just died. So I'm carrying this into August. And we don't have plans, but what are you starting off the month with?
Well, I am starting off the month the sequel to The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune.
Which is Somewhere Beyond the Sea.
Is Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. It's a sequel to this.
Yeah.
And it just carries on with the Arthur, who is the house father of some orphanage
it's a school/orphanage, and he's in charge of it. Yeah.
So his character is now being challenged, and I think the second book is he has to go and defend himself.
And of course, a new kid ends up at the school who sort of challenges his perception. Because in the first book, his big thing is he doesn't like the kids to be called monsters. And a kid ends up at the school who takes pride in being a monster and sort of challenges a lot of the ways he's set up this world around the kids. Yeah. I don't think it's actually released yet. We have been blessed and favored and have early access to the audio. So you are going to read it first, and then when you're done, I will do it.
Okay.
And we'll report back. But I am really excited about that journey.
I am too.
Yeah.
So because The House on the Cerulean Sea was such a beautiful book.
It's wonderful.
I mean, the kids they're not monsters, but they're amoebas. They're the soul of Satan.
There's one who could be Lucifer, who literally could be the Antichrist.
But they are all not human, but they are just lovely people. And the audio's fun because the guy who reads the audio does the voices so well.
Yeah, really does.
Yeah.
And I think it hit us really hard as former foster parents, because what Arthur does for these kids, he's trying to show that with love, you can change the course of a kid's life. And like, but that especially comes out with this kid who could be the Antichrist, because he is really working with this kid to show him how to love people and care for people and not give in to destructive impulses. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And love can move mountains.
It can.
Look at me being cheesy. And then I'm also listening to the audio of The History of Sound by Ben Shattuck, which is a story collection. And I'm savoring it as I go through, because I'm liking it enough that I really want to take time with each story. And that's been lovely. But I don't know what my next book will be. I know I want to get back to my Pulitzer Project. And I decided that Oliver Lafarge's Laughing Boy is going to be what I use as an entry point to N. Scott Momaday, because I've talked about it. But so that's going to be my next one. I'd like to do it at some point in August, but, you know, I'm a mood reader. So once I finish The Country Girls, and I'm getting close. I'm only 50 pages away from the end of The Lonely Girls. It's going to take me a while to finish The History of Sound. But once I finish The Country Girls, I'll see where I'm at and what I feel like doing. Maybe it will be Laughing Boy. Maybe it will be something else. We'll see. And did you have any idea what else you might read?
I have no clue.
Yeah, you're about to go off on another work trip. So hard to plan.
Yeah. Well, my work trip is going to definitely give me enough time to do House by the Sea.
Yeah.
Or Beyond the Sea. And so I'm looking forward to it. So,
yeah.
I want to take it slow so I can really get into it. So.
Yeah. We're all about taking it slow and easy, unless I tell myself I need 10 books in a month.
Stop that.
Yeah, never again. So
I want to give a big shout out to the women of the Olympics.
Yes.
We've been watching the Olympics, the gymnast and swimming, and Simone Biles, Suni Lee, Katie Ledecky.
I didn't know.
All smashed gold.
Yes.
Good for them.
I feel like the women's events we've watched have been much more interesting than the men's. Just saying, even with gymnastics. And I didn't know that Suni Lee was coming back from kidney disease.
Yeah.
And really fought her way back to being at the level to compete at the Olympics.
Because they didn't think she would be able to compete again.
Yeah. So
and now she's getting silver and bronze in the women's.
Yeah, in the all-around. Good for her. So it has been inspirational to watch that. They've got started track and field, so pole vault has been making headlines as we're
big headlines.
This. Yeah, big headlines.
Poor guy.
He'll
be just fine.
He'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
But anyway, it has been fun watching the Olympics.
It has been fun watching the Olympics, but shout out to the women for There's a woman from Missoula, where we live, that got...
Did she get gold?
Bronze. No, she got bronze.
Yes.
In swimming.
Yeah.
And so it's it was 32 years to the date her father
picked up bronze.
Bronze in the same event.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So congratulations to the women of the Olympics.
Yeah. And the men.
Yeah.
But mostly the women. So, yeah. And then we'll see what we get up to in August. July was a fun reading month. You're fun as always. Sorry, Teddy is asleep on the floor, cooling down next to us, and we
just had a family friend come all day yesterday and today, and she's got a
5-year-old,
and
a
dog. So Teddy was just everywhere. So he's tired.
But credit to Teddy. He was a champ. He's really good with the 5-year-old. He was really, because the other dog is older, has arthritis, and is a little protective of personal space. Yeah. So the first time Teddy went up to say hello, the dog growled at him, and he was like, "Oh, okay," and gave her space for the rest of the time that they were in the house. So shout out to Teddy as well for being a good boy. Yeah. And it was nice to see that friend. So that's July. We'll see what we end up doing in August. And shout out to my t-shirt as well, because since July, we're wrapping up July, and July is our anniversary month, I thought it would be fun to wear a t-shirt that I got on Lake Moraine, which is where Jill and I got married. Yeah. And another summer activity is that we like to bike the Hiawatha, so that's what he's
with
wearing.
Our friend Leon.
So. Yeah. So we'll be doing that soon.
We'll be doing that very soon.
Yes.
If it ever calms down.
If it ever cools down.
Fires and heat.
Yeah.
So it's really bad here on both.
Speaking of which, we should either get in an air-conditioned car with Teddy to give him some excitement, or we should sit in front of a fan, because it's hot. So, as always, we really appreciate your time, and we will be back. Until next time, happy reading.
Happy baking.
Happy baking.